to pass it along.
The issue seems like it works in the room, but the people on streaming.
Yeah, I'm like wearing 3 layers. It's always been freezing in here.
Yeah, it's awfully toasty in here tonight. If they get much
We need to make sure it's unlocked on the outside. We've got 5 minutes.
Although I saw that new Mercury.
Yeah. This. Well,
So you're saying that the mic was
Hey, Kevin.
sideways? All right.
I've got so many accounts. My next
Oh,
Oh, did you put it in the fridge?
I don't like.
Oh, they're all going to take it to go.
Come to our January meeting. That's why I brought up maybe transitioning to a
Well, I'm
line
glad it went over well.
calendar year. Might be better. I don't know.
That's why I thought of it. I was like, it's all right there in one little room. Right.
Well, they have to.
Plus it's already
Yes.
paid for, so you just pick
I didn't.
Oh, I thought somebody called my name. I apologize. No, it's first they gotta fill out the new application form. And then the new application form, then they fill out the waiver. And then we gotta get the waiver, and they get that to Al, which I didn't have. How do you get private citizens to pay attention? What is required? Maybe I think the issue is just brain our culture that it's now the appointment you have to go back. Yes. Well, but there's the other dilemma. By the time, and I could have done something this year, but I don't ever feel comfortable doing that. Yeah. This year wouldn't have been an issue, but you could probably do it at the tail end of October, but.
Oh, well, I'll just ask anyone if they had trouble.
And this was a delight too,
Oh,
my speech.
I
Finish
don't
that.
think that I don't think that.
I thought you said we could just
It's not in the
ask to
printout.
try to get this done with memory what you wrote. But you can't let it go. Like I couldn't have been pissed and gone home.
Well, there's a summary of all the amendments.
Luckily, I write a lot of
Maybe it
things.
was a
I
link
can't
in the memo
first.
then. Dean said he was having trouble accessing it. Did anyone, did you guys have trouble getting the amended budget projections downloaded?
Yes.
Yes, that.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was on the
No,
packet.
no, no. Dean mentioned he was having trouble viewing this.
Oh, yeah.
If you clicked on it, it wouldn't access.
Thank you.
Yes. Does anyone want a hard copy?
thank you.
I'll take a hard copy if you want.
I got one. Elle got printed me one. Thank you.
Nicole, it's the amended projection.
Certainly doesn't hurt.
Oh,
Rolling in it. Were you that kid in class who like walked in the door after the bell rang?
Terry, are you good? I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. For those of you who are in the audience, there are copies of the agenda on the back table. If you'd be so kind to sign in, we would appreciate that. There's also hearing devices if you need them. Roll call. Members present this evening are Council Members Kamara Sulak, Seo, Del Orco, Dillon, Rice, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, and Mayor Marl. From City staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Assistant City Manager Getzman, Community Development Director Harrington, Treasurer Cole, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, and PD Budget Analyst Terry. There were also some supplemental materials provided this evening, a written copy of my State of the City address, a FY23 amended budget, and then a list of the 2023 citizen appointments to board, commissions, and committees. I do want to make just one statement on that. There are a number of vacancies. Our new process has caused some minor hiccups and delays. Of course, people who are individuals, who want to be reappointed to a board and commission need to fill out an additional application and complete a background check that requires a waiver. So we have a number of people in the hopper. We hope to resolve and correct most of these vacancies by the time we reconvene on January the 23rd. Of course, if there are individuals who'd like to serve on any of our boards and commissions, we'd welcome your applications. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by Seo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. I'll get you on the next one, Councilmember Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll dispense with that. So first, we come to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? Record will reflect there are none from the audience. Clerk Royal, did we receive any in advance of tonight's meeting? No, sir. Easy enough. Then we proceed to we have two presentations this evening. The first is the swearing in of 3 council members and the mayor-elect. And we have the very honorable Judge Freshour with us. Anna, thank you for joining us. Would you like to come forward at this time? And Your Honor, you're welcome to use the microphone at the podium or the handheld, which is directly to your right.
Do I have to hold it?
You do.
Oh.
Yeah. Make sure the switch is on at the bottom, Your Honor.
I turned it on.
You turned it on. Thank you, Clerk Royal. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Who would you like to begin with?
Janet Dillon.
Excellent. And Janet may have some family and friends who may wish to join her. The same may be true of Councilmember-elect Rice and Mr. Gearbaugh as well. Yeah, yep. Please, Matt. Wherever Janet would like you to be.
Can you please raise your right hand? I, Janet Dillon,
I, Janet Dillon,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
as a member of the City Council
as a member of the City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
in and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw, and the State of Michigan. Oh, I apologize.
State of Michigan,
According to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Dean Gerbat.
Congratulations.
Am I pronouncing it correctly? Yes. Can you raise your right hand? I, Dean B. Gerbach,
I, Dean B. Gearbach,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties as a member of the City Council
the duties as a member of the City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
in and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washtenaw,
and the State of Michigan,
and the State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nicole Rice. Raise your right hand. I, Nicole Rice,
I, Nicole Rice,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
as a member of the City Council
as a member of the City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
in and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washtenaw,
and the State of Michigan,
and the State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. And Mayor Ma? Good evening. Can you raise your right hand? I, Brian D. Marl,
I, Brian D. Morrow,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
as Mayor of the City Council
as Mayor of the City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
in and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washtenaw,
and the State of Michigan,
and the State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Judge Freshour, thank you again for your time this evening. We appreciate it very much. We are going to transition to my charter-sanctioned State of the City address. My friends, good evening. City Council, City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Judge Freshour, distinguished guests, and my fellow Salinians. It is a distinct honor to provide the citizens of Saline with my 11th State of the City address. As I articulated this past July, this past year, and these past 6 months have been both challenging and productive. We continue to endure the lingering effects of a global health pandemic, subsequent disruptions to supply chains, increased labor shortages, and burgeoning inflation. But progressive, forward-thinking leaders do not become demoralized or disheartened. I've said it before, I look at hard times and say this too shall pass. I am confident that the 2023 calendar year, will be one of progress and productivity. Now, as I've expressed this before, but it certainly bears repeating. Based on our strong track record over the past several years, it should be crystal clear to all city residents and business owners. The days of infrastructure delays and deferrals are over. The city, council more specifically, will continue to act boldly and invest robustly in our municipal streets, sidewalks, and water and sewer systems. Accordingly, let me begin tonight with infrastructure. In the ensuing months, our city will continue to invest heavily in our municipal assets, and residents can expect to hear more about specific projects at forthcoming town hall events. Additionally, our city website now features dedicated project pages for all current and pending infrastructure projects. It is a great resource to get information about project statuses and timelines. As I mentioned in July, recent investments in our water infrastructure have already yielded significant results, i.e. a substantial decrease in water discoloration complaints. By way of example, the city received nearly 100 monthly discoloration complaints via our online survey tool during the spring of 2022. To date, we are receiving just a handful per month. As always, if residents experience water discoloration issues, they are encouraged to use the new citizen reporting tool on our city website to report those concerns. Please rest assured the city will continue to use this reporting tool to properly direct resources and maintain these improvements. Also, the city will continue our valve assessment rehabilitation initiative, knowing, of course, that this project has a direct and unambiguous impact on water quality and clarity. Additionally, due to the significance of these issues, DPW and the city's PR department will continue to produce our recurring newsletter. Each of these newsletters contains substantive messaging on both water quality and other timely issues. Separately, the city's meter changeout program is nearing completion. Educational materials have been provided, ergo helping residents to better understand the process and how our new online reporting tools will improve the customer service experience for all municipal utility users. Residents are strongly encouraged to take full advantage and sign up for the new online dashboard that comes with this system. This will help residents to better understand usage and quickly identify potentially costly leaks within their systems. Transitioning to our wastewater treatment facility. In the latter half of 2022, our plant's rehabilitation project received a very favorable score from the state of Michigan for revolving fund financing. As such, the city of Saline has qualified for low interest financing. We are now moving forward expeditiously with bidding and construction of said project, and work will likely commence during the fall months of 2023. Also, as discussed previously, the city will seek additional support to help subsidize the cost of rehabilitation of our wastewater treatment facility. In fact, I must tell you, this will be a top priority for my office during the ensuing months. Securing additional funding will allow the city to control and/or mitigate significant increases to water and sewer rates. Further, the city will likely apply for 2 separate appropriations, one from both the state and federal government, along with a targeted grant via the Environmental Protection Agency. Last, if these efforts are to be successful, we will undoubtedly need the support from private citizens and local business owners. You should expect to hear more in the weeks and months ahead. Additionally, as most are aware, the city's water treatment and wastewater treatment ad hoc advisory group continues to meet bi-monthly to provide advice and review of projects and initiatives relating to these vital services. Further, as referenced in 2022, our city engineer, along with other key personnel, are working diligently to revise our existing capital improvement plan to an asset management-based capital improvement plan. Asset management programs include tools and techniques to evaluate risk and prioritize capital and O&M decisions. Knowing our system and organizing the data is the first and most important critical step in any infrastructure asset management approach. Ultimately, proper asset management tools will shift decision-making from reactive to proactive, thereby improving infrastructure quality throughout our city. 2023 will also be an active year regarding street and road maintenance. Resurfacing projects will be completed on portions of McKay Street, Clark Street, with additional work to be completed on Old Creek and North Maple in conjunction with East Belt sewer repairs. This specific East Belt project will be substantially complete by the end of 2023, with final completion expected by 2024. At such time, the corresponding roads will be repaired, along with some relatively minor pedestrian improvements. 2023 will also be an active year on the sidewalk front as well. The city will begin design work on the long-anticipated US 12 sidewalk connecting Mill Pond Park to Austin Drive. We will also reactivate our comprehensive sidewalk initiative, likely beginning in our city's northwest quadrant. Last, we will continue to secure outside funding for the proposed River Walk located at Mill Pond Park, thus leveraging and fully utilizing what is arguably the nicest recreation space in the broader Saline community. Transitioning now to economic development. City leadership is acutely aware of the challenges our business owners and workers have experienced and will continue to experience in the year ahead. First and foremost, I'm keenly aware that the best thing that any of us can do during uncertain economic times is to prioritize our local businesses. If you value our community's enterprises or the products or services they provide, please show them some extra support in the months ahead. Our revised master plan will be adopted in the first half of 2023. Again, we appreciate the feedback we've received thus far. If anyone has additional comments, they are encouraged to please contact Community Development Director Ben Harrington at your earliest convenience. Again, as has been our custom these past 10 years, we will continue to host our annual large and small business summits in 2023, likely with a primary focus on workforce development and talent recruitment and attraction. Under the leadership of Mr. Harrington, and with new representation from the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce and Saline Main Street, we will continue to strengthen and improve our community recruitment and retention team. This group will likely assist with the development and finalization of a multi-pronged economic development strategy. Of course, a critical part of said strategy will be filling vacant storefronts and working to complete and/or redevelop stalled initiatives throughout our community. This, too, will be a top priority for my office during the remaining months of 2023. As referenced this past summer, our Community Development Department is proactively performing code enforcement on properties that have been blighted, damaged, or vacant. Saline cannot and will not tolerate properties that are unattended and/or magnets for blight. Also, after thoughtful consideration, City Council adopted a residential rental inspection ordinance early this summer. Implementation is proceeding as planned. While I regret the delay, I'm hopeful that in the near future, we will begin a comprehensive review of all existing site plans to ensure that commercial and industrial properties are meeting the standards that were approved and authorized by staff and/or the Planning Commission. These site plan reviews will place the strongest possible emphasis on public safety while also improving the attractiveness of parcels throughout our community. The Code Review Committee, now a permanent group comprised mainly of private citizens and business owners, remains a great outlet for individuals to recommend policy or ordinance changes, particularly if they seek to modernize and/or streamline our city's regulatory framework. Lastly, I'm excited to announce that we have strong interest from an external stakeholder to fund the reestablishment of our long-dormant Economic Development Trust Fund, thereby providing loans and microgrants to area businesses and those interested in relocating to the city of Saline. This is an important development, another tool in our municipal tool belt to help incentivize job creation and economic growth in the city. As I've stated for more than a decade, our first responders can rest easy, knowing that our community's elected officials will continue to provide them the resources they need to effectively serve and protect the residents of our area. The Saline Police Department has fully integrated and implemented a new body-worn camera taser initiative. The corresponding taser policy was recently completed, and training on both the policy and the taser itself occurred during the second half of 2022. The department's goals and strategies, which focus on four critical areas: community engagement, education and training, mental health, and recruitment and retention, are still being developed by department personnel and other regional stakeholders. While there have been some unfortunate delays, I can confirm that the accreditation process is still moving forward with the goal of completion by the end of the 2023 calendar year. This past summer, several of our officers visited our local police academy for the purposes of recruiting new personnel. This approach will and must continue. The Saline Police Department will pursue new strategies and techniques to recruit and retain talent. In fact, Council, in conjunction with city staff, will be discussing this matter further on January the 23rd, at our January 23rd council meeting specifically, In the meantime, if any individuals are interested in employment opportunities within the Saline Police Department, they are encouraged to connect with Chief Radzik or Assistant City Manager Getzman, respectively. The Saline Area Fire Department recently authorized and approved a new risk mitigation initiative, which will commence later this month. Staff and the Fire Board, the Saline Fire Board more specifically, have also continued to work on evaluating and improving operations, policies, our governance model, and existing funding streams, with two primary focuses. One, on developing the necessary framework for a forthcoming fire authority, and two, ensuring that all our firefighters can effectively meet the needs of our community in the years ahead. As residents are aware, our 2022-2023 general operating budget, which covers July 1 through June 30th, demonstrates that Saline's elected and appointed officials remain good stewards of public resources. Salinians can rest easy knowing that during these uncertain times, with costs dramatically increasing, we've exercised the same fiscal prudence and strategic thinking that has been utilized over the past decade. Moving forward, Council will continue to prioritize the city's infrastructure, our various municipal assets and legacy costs, while maintaining healthy fund balances. In fact, our fund balance policy has compelled us to initiate some cost savings initiatives. This should not be viewed as a reason for concern or alarm. Rather, city leadership is taking proactive steps to ensure that our city remains stable and financially viable for years to come. Further, I'm pleased to report that under the leadership of City Treasurer Cole, we have dramatically improved our investment portfolio, and based upon the current rate of return, we expect to generate approximately $500,000 more in revenue on an annual basis. Additionally, our city's Rec Center Sustainability Task Force has now transitioned into an advisory panel, assisting Parks and Rec Director Scruggs and her staff as we continue to plan for the future of our municipally owned recreation complex. We have also engaged the services of an independent consultant, Barry Dunn, to assist us with planning. Needless to say, our rec center must be accessible and well used by members of the Saline community without being an undue burden on our city's general fund. As I've articulated for the better part of 2 years now, our changing demographics, coupled with the adverse effects of the recent pandemic, have brought to light the undeniable need for additional healthcare services in the Saline area. Our residents' quality of life is directly linked to accessible, quality healthcare amenities. As such, our city's Healthcare Improvement Task Force has been working hard to correct this significant and glaring deficiency. I can state unequivocally that tremendous progress is being made, and if residents have thoughts or would like to get involved, feel free to connect with Chairperson Caitlin Scheibel or any member of our Healthcare Committee. It is my duty to report, that the Saline Celtic Festival will likely relocate to the Farm Council grounds located in Lodi Township beginning in 2023. To make a long story short, the festival has essentially outgrown Mill Pond Park. Accordingly, while we wish the group and their volunteers continued success, we will formally separate the city from the festival and all future liabilities later this year. Last, let me message on openness and communication for just a moment. In early 2022, we launched a new, redesigned, and streamlined municipal website. Our new city website is far superior to its predecessor, but of course, it is not without imperfections. If you have thoughts or ideas on how it can be improved, please connect with our IT director, Mr. Schonk. I know he would welcome your feedback. The new city website also replaces C-Click Fix with a new reporting tool, allowing residents and business owners to engage directly with staff. Please note, by the end of January, our existing surveys on water quality and odor abatement will be discontinued. We want all complaints and inquiries to go through one portal, again, our new online reporting tool. In recent months, we've also launched direct communiques to our HOAs and condo associations, along with a new text message initiative, called the 411. If you're not on the list, or if you'd like to learn more, please contact our city's PR generalist, Ms. Massey. As promised in 2022, we have initiated in-person town halls in advance of all major capital construction projects, engaging with residents and property owners most impacted by capital initiatives. Let me end by acknowledging the years of service and the innumerable contributions made by my council colleagues and friends. Mayor Pro Tem Dean Gearbaugh, council members Janet Dillon, Jack Seo, Jim Delorco, and Kevin Kamara-Sulak. We also welcome our newest member, Nicole Rice, and we know that her thoughtfulness and dedication will enrich and strengthen an already strong city council. Last, we also thank our former member Dawn Kraus for her years of service and wish her and her family the very best in all their future endeavors. I also sincerely thank our very talented and dedicated staff who care deeply for this community and provide exceptional service to our residents on a daily basis. On behalf of council, we thank each of you. Our community would not be the world-class city it is without your commitment and contributions. My friends, in conclusion, please rest assured this community will continue to experience hardships and challenges, but our renewed focus on core services, investing in our infrastructure, strengthening public safety, while pursuing best practices for organizational efficiency, will undoubtedly improve the quality of our quality of life. I've said it before, Saline is a very special place, and it's worth fighting for. I continue to believe that Saline's best days are yet to come. To bring this full circle, let me end tonight with the words of former President Bill Clinton. The true measure of character in politics can never be perfection, because if it were, no one could pass. The true measure is genuine commitment. That lasts day in and day out, through failures, disappointments, defeat, and setback. The true measure is rooted in a desire to do better, and that it is always possible to do better, and that we are morally bound to do better. That has been and will continue to be the driving force in my life, in and out of politics. Thank you, friends. God bless you, and God bless Saline. I'll try to exercise some brevity, too, when I revisit this issue at our July meeting, so thank you for your patience. We proceed now to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We will move on to public hearing. Item 23-07, special land use for gym at 1359 East Michigan Avenue. The first motion will be a motion to open the public hearing at 7:25, affording the public to speak to this issue.
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh to open at 7:25. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this issue?
Move to close.
Moved by CO to close the public hearing at 7:26. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kamara-Sulak. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Public hearing is now closed. The subsequent motion will be a motion to acknowledge the memo dated December 15th, 2022 from Recording Secretary Ritchie, and to approve with conditions or not to approve the special land use for 1359 East Michigan Avenue for a gym with the following conditions as enumerated on tonight's agenda.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by CO to acknowledge with and approve, and Mr. CO, is that with the conditions that are enumerated on the agenda?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. In the absence of Recording Secretary Ms. Ritchie, Community Development Director Harrington, do you care to make some comments?
Yes, absolutely. So the applicants are looking to open a gym or a fitness club at 1359 East Michigan Avenue. It was previously another gym or fitness club. I think it was a private health club prior to this. One of the considerations that we can have going forward are how applicants need to submit site plans with their special land uses. So in this instance, the applicant is moving in to a tenant suite that they do not own. They're not proposing any exterior modifications besides signage. So this is likely an issue I'll bring back to you in the future to really streamline this process and make it easier on potential business owners coming to Saline. The motion and the planning case was relatively uncontentious. It was previously a gym. We don't really have any outstanding concerns about utilities. There's plenty of adequate parking at the site, and the two gentlemen who are going to be operating the business are energetic, friendly, and I think will be a great asset to the community. I'm happy to answer any questions, and they are here this evening as well.
Very good. Before we get to questions and before we entertain comments from the petitioner, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh is the liaison to the Planning Commission. Is there anything you would like to add at this time?
No, we're just glad to have them coming into the location again. I believe the gym was successful there before, and it will be again.
Very good. Gentlemen, would you care to come to the podium and introduce yourselves and maybe talk a little bit about your business model? Obviously, you shared some remarks with the Planning Commission. This is a different group, but I think City Council would welcome an introduction and a little bit of an overview of your business model.
Yeah, so we were working as personal trainers at a place in Ann Arbor previously before COVID and kind of the whole thing got shut down. But we are happy to be in Saline, and yeah, we operate a private training studio type of gym where you can't come in, like you can come in, but it's got to be personal training sessions kind of thing. So the amount of people in there, it's going to be small and tidy. Yeah, so we pride ourselves on safe, effective training styles and personal training.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Why don't you hang tight? There might be questions that are best addressed by either one of you. Are there questions for our Planning Commission liaison, Mr. Harrington, or the petitioners this evening? Easy enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? We have a motion moved by CO, seconded by Kamara Sulak to acknowledge and to approve with the conditions as enumerated on tonight's agenda. There appear to be none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, gentlemen. Look forward to your business opening. Best of luck. We move on to new business item 23-08, special land use for interior storage. This business is located at 1400 East Michigan Ave. Again, I need a motion to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue at 7:29.
So moved.
I'll let Gearbaugh be the mover and Dylan be the second. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding a proposed special land use for 1400 East Michigan Avenue? You will have 3 minutes once you reach the podium.
Mary Hess. And regarding the request, there were certain things that Mr. Harrington had asked as far as what was it going to contain. And I hope that all the questions have been asked and received towards the council's okaying this tonight, and also Mr. Harrington. Thank you.
Thank you. We will make sure to address that. We'll make sure that Mr. Harrington addresses those concerns during his remarks. That will take place in just a moment, or that will proceed momentarily, excuse me. Any additional citizen comments regarding a special land use for 1400 East Michigan Avenue? Is there a motion to close the public hearing at 7:30? Moved by Gearba to close, seconded by CO. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The subsequent motion will be a motion to acknowledge the memo dated December 15th, 2022, from Recording Secretary Ritchie, and to approve with conditions or not to approve the special land use for 1400 East Michigan Ave for interior storage with the one following condition as enumerated on tonight's agenda.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
With the condition, Mr. Seal? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded again by Kamir Sulak. I'll first defer to Community Development Director Harrington, if Mayor Pro Tem Gearba cares to make a comment as the Planning Commission rep, and then we will hear from the petitioner who is in the audience this evening.
Absolutely. I think mini storage is always a tricky thing to bring in a community. The proposed site is already home to Simply Storage, and they're simply asking for a floor expansion in their existing building. So they're not building a new site. It's not going to be low-density mini storage that's spread out and very hard to plan around it and move on going forward. So ultimately, it met, I thought, the criteria of our special land use. It will be relatively undisruptive, and there's no real concerns or other exterior site modifications. And I know there were some concerns about previous outdoor storage occurring at the site, but those concerns were addressed at the Planning Commission meeting and won't be an issue going forward. The only outstanding concern from a city standpoint is a massage establishment that's located as a tenant of Simply Storage themselves. So they're not a tenant of the larger building. It's specifically a tenant of Simply Storage that has a defined tenant space. There are a variety of issues with this, namely being that the zoning would not permit a massage establishment in addition to not being licensed by the city, which is a requirement of our ordinance. We are working with Simply Storage and the massage establishment to rectify the situation. Their only recourse would be to seek a use variance, which I don't believe would have a lot of traction, but we can get more into that at a later date. As for the proposal specifically, there were no major concerns with the layout of the site, and we believe it's adequate going forward. So it was our recommendation, the Planning Commission's recommendation, that this be approved with that one condition, more as a formality to continue following that specifically.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Gearba, any comments from a Planning Commissioner perspective?
I think I need a little more clarification in terms of the massage parlor. When we talked about it, we weren't sure whether it was just a tenant of the facility, but now you're indicating that it's a tenant of this petitioner?
It's a template, so that the petitioner is also separate from the actual organization. But yes, the petitioner is aware, Simply Storage is aware that this is in violation of our zoning code, and their attorneys are working with the massage establishment as we speak. But it is also the city's intent to follow up if that can't be dealt with in a reasonable timeline.
Would that be, I guess for my concern and from the Planning Commission's concern, moving this forward with that type of violation in place seems early?
Well, there was a condition of the site plan itself that it would have to be removed to remove any sort of assumption that the city was somehow approving it at this location. So from as far as that perspective is concerned, I think we're good. The no approval would then grant the massage establishment permission to exist. Because the special land use is specifically for mini storage and self-storage facilities. It's not for the massage establishment.
Yeah, I think the mayor has just suggested we may add another condition to the motion to make sure that's clarified.
Okay.
Just to strengthen our position a bit further.
To make sure that that's taken care of. However we should word that, I would appreciate that. Maybe the city manager and you two can.
Why don't you take a moment to try and draft some, it would be condition 2 then, based on Mr. Gearba's concerns. If Mayor Pro Tem Gearba doesn't have any additional thoughts or comments, you go, please.
And the only other one regarding storage, the items and things that'll be stored in there, how do we handle hazardous materials and all that?
So there's a specific provision of our code as it relates to self-storage facilities already. But that can be further addressed by state regulations surrounding hazardous materials. And then I'm sure there's department or company policy on the storage of hazardous materials. But not permissible, essentially, is the long and short of it.
Yeah, and I think that was just the one clarification I had to understand for our public, that those things are already regulated and can be addressed in other ordinances. Thank you.
Our petitioner is here. Thank you for your patience. You probably didn't realize you had to listen to a 15-minute speech from the mayor, so.
I'm actually very impressed, Mayor.
Oh, you're very kind.
That was very moved through things very quickly. My name is Jared Farmer with Farmer Development, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
You want to talk a little bit about your business model in history, and then we'll open it up for questions?
Absolutely. So we're a developer and a constructor for self-storage specifically, and we're working for our client, which is Simply Self-Storage. And what we have here is just a conversion of some space that has been empty for a while. It's going to be directly adjacent to existing storage inside the building. And so we're just taking some space that's been basically unoccupied for quite a while and putting it back to use.
And I do want to follow up from a comment that you made and that I questioned you on at our recent planning commission meeting, because I have received numerous inquiries from constituents. You will be occupying what was intended to be a Bill Knapp's outlet store, correct?
That is correct. That is part of the area.
So unfortunately, that business never came to fruition, but we have a new enterprise who will be occupying the space, which is good news. Are there questions for Mr. Harrington, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, as the liaison to the Planning Commission, or the applicant this evening? Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. I think one of my questions may have just been answered. So is any of the space currently being utilized, or is it all vacant space?
I think they moved one tenant from one part of the building to another vacancy that they had, but I could be wrong. But more or less, no, that's what was the genesis for the choice to expand, was that they had this vacant space that they wanted to fill. They had trouble finding tenants. It's not hard to find people who are eager to store their belongings.
Okay. And should the massage business be relocated outside of that building, will they then use that space in addition to the space that they've currently asked for?
So the proposed tenant suite isn't really even a formal, well, it is and it isn't. So building code-wise, it is a separate tenant suite. But yes, that would be part of their general office space, and they could potentially rent it out to a compliant use.
Okay. That's good. And is there anything that needs to be done with change of use, since it seems like that was dedicated as office space?
So for the building department, yes, they have different standards they have to meet for installation when something goes from office to storage, or vice versa. So that they have to meet state building code standards, but this isn't their change of use effectively ask is the special land use. So we're taking away what was the industrial office and making it into a self-storage facility.
Okay, and I would assume then it means that we will finally see the end of the coming soon Bill Knapp sign that's been there for several years, as well as their awnings and such, since that business is no longer in that spot.
That is correct. It wasn't part of their signage plan, but I imagine the applicant could speak to the removal of the signage.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the dais? Councilmember Rice?
Does this complete the space, will the space be filled once the Simply Storage is expanded?
I believe at least their portion of the building, yes. There are two other tenants on the east side of the building, but I believe that those are also primarily, if not 100% full at this point.
I believe that is correct.
Anything else from the dais? We thank the petitioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate your
very
time.
much.
Did you, were you able to come up with some language for a second condition?
Yes, we'd suggest the second condition simply be that conditional approval is limited exclusively to the development of self-storage facilities.
Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh, you comfortable with that? Okay. And let me refer back to the mover and seconder. Mr. Seo, would you, again, we don't follow strict Robert's Rules of Order. Would you accept a quasi-friendly amendment to include that language in the motion?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Kamara-Sulak, would you be amenable to that as the seconder of the motion?
Definitely.
Okay, then that second condition is added without objection. Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
We move on to new business. We have 3 items. First up is item 1, 23-09, appointment of Mayor Pro Tem for 2023. This will be a motion to appoint Councilmember Dillon to serve as Mayor Pro Tem for the calendar year of 2023, and to appoint Councilmember Seo as presiding officer in the event that both Mayor Marl and Mayor Pro Tem Dillon are absent.
Move to appoint and to appoint.
Moved by Gearbaugh to appoint and to appoint. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Congratulations. That was your first second as a council member. Well, very briefly, and I did send an email correspondence to council, I believe, 2 weeks ago regarding this issue. So this follows the normal protocol that was established probably 5 years ago, where we appoint both a mayor pro tem and a second presiding officer, because there have been several occasions in the past 2 years where both the mayor pro tem and mayor were absent. So first, let me thank outgoing Mayor Pro Tem Dean Gearbaugh for doing an extraordinary job these past 3 years. I appreciated your support in council, my friend, and I'm looking forward to working with Councilmember Dillon. She has the experience and dedication, I think, to do very well in this new role. And of course, in the event that both Janet and I are absent, I'm sure that Councilmember Seal will be more than capable of filling in and presiding. Is there any discussion or comment on the motion? And we have a motion properly moved by outgoing Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, seconded by Councilmember Rice to appoint. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 2, which is 23-10, Master Plan Update Proposal. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt from the memo, acknowledge receipt of the memo from Community Development Director Harrington, and to approve or not to approve the proposal from Carlisle Wortman and Associates in the amount of $19,900.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seal. Mr. Harrington, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Planner Auerbach from Carlisle Wortman Associates is also here tonight to answer any questions and speak to any concerns that you might have. I think that this is a great proposal. We had worked with Carlisle Wortman to find something that worked for our update. Being in a city for a very limited period of time, it's kind of hard to do a 5-year master plan in its totality before really knowing the community. So I think our update's focused on areas that I think we can grow and strengthen as a city. Being cognizant of the fact that the general development of the city has not changed that drastically over the last 5 years, but then looking forward into these key areas that we can build on, and that 5 years from now, maybe we look at more of a total overhaul of the plan as things start to really change around our community. So I think it's a great proposal. I think it's a great point for us to jump off of, and I would just also note that with the master plan, although it's a 5-year thing, we have the ability to amend it or edit it at any time. So if we find 2 years from now that we needed 2 more sections done, that's absolutely something that we're able to follow up with and amend in a timely and considerate manner. So with that, I'll give it to Planner Auerbach to go over it.
Appreciate our planner being here this evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for your consideration. I think Mr. Harrington touched on all the high points, but we're looking forward to continued working with the subcommittee and staff, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Very good. Are there questions from the dais for either Mr. Harrington or our petitioner, please?
Being a member of the subcommittee, do we have any more opportunities for the public to contribute towards this?
Yeah, so one of the things outlined in their scope is actually a survey that we're able to disseminate to the public. We were intentional thinking about how we wanted to craft a survey that wasn't going to be inundating the public with a lot of questions, but rather try to get higher level feels on the various topics that we proposed, which were housing, downtown, transportation, environment, sustainability, and resilience. So really trying to get large, broader feedback on the specific pressure points that our community is feeling in each of those areas, and then synthesizing that with the town hall feedback we got at the 2 times. Once again, it's a very fluid process. There's not a lot that guides us that's a requirement. So, if we find out of the survey, very different results than what we got in our first town halls, we're always able to hold another town hall if that's something that we think is necessary. So there's plenty of other engagement opportunities, and I still encourage members of the public to reach out to me whenever they have comments, questions, or concerns, and we can absolutely add that feedback to the master plan.
And what tool will we be using for survey? Online, paper, combination?
We had discussed an online format, and we'll be, I don't have the name of the software offhand, but we'll be preparing the survey and then forwarding it to staff to distribute. I don't believe discussed a paper option, but I think that could be something that could be made available on request.
For sure, and I think another option too is doing the direct mailings of QR codes or things like that, which kind of marry the two. The one issue with doing paper and non-paper is that someone still has to convert that paper stuff into the non-paper, into a digital format to synthesize with the rest of the results. So I think our preference would be to try to keep it as digital as possible and really limit the number of paper responses, because it takes more of a drag on our consultants to synthesize it, or more of a drag on staff to be able to format that into the appropriate manner.
Perhaps this is too bold, but Mr. Gearbaugh's comments I guess, compel me to articulate this this evening. But I've been participating and or leading coffee hours, town halls, public events for, well, this will be my 11th year. And I thought the two master plan town halls that we had in late 2022, while the first was not particularly well attended, the second one had much better attendance. I thought, from my judgment, from my perspective, those were two of the best public engagement sessions we've had during my tenure as both mayor and a council member. One, because it was fairly issue specific, but also because we were discussing things that were of profound interest to our constituents and business owners. And I thought you did an excellent job facilitating that. So I guess my recommendation to the steering committee is to maybe discuss the benefit of having another session, because I found it extremely worthwhile.
Yeah,
Take less time to prepare for it this time around.
Yeah, and I believe we can do that, because I know even a decade or more ago, we did have a lot more participation. It just depends on the timing of the year, and of course, being late fall is difficult, especially with the holidays and everything else coming up. So I agree. I think probably another in-person one would be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on the conversation, because I believe that Mr. Harrington and I have spoken about this, that I believe there is an opportunity, if we don't want to do a paper one, because I do understand that somebody does have to translate that into an electronic version, is going out into the public and at our events, bringing laptops and having kiosks available at like the senior center and places like that, where we can aid people that are not that computer savvy or that may not have a device at home or would be a little bit reluctant to participate through an electronic means. I think if we can just bring it into the communities, we have enough community events, and with the time span of doing this, I think that there's opportunities. We can always have a device available here at City Hall, right outside of our meetings, things like that. I think that there's a lot of opportunities, because I do understand that not everyone is going to want to do it themselves at home or have the means to do it, but I really do value a lot of participation, and I'm not quite ready to let go of that paper thing, so this might be a way of finding a way to sort of bridge that in the meantime. And I do agree that I think another public session would be a good thing. Timing is everything, and it is difficult. I know that fall is a difficult time, and maybe we should think about, when we move forward, sort of revamping some of our things so that they don't fall in that last quarter of the year, and try to rework the timing of things. But I would be in favor of doing another public session.
Very good. Any additional comments? Councilmember Del Orco?
Yeah, Mr. Harrington, I was just curious about what we learned from the town halls. Was there an attempt to collate that data and distill it down to a scoring criteria and take-home points that we can share with council and the public?
Right, so there's nothing that's scoring. It's not a competition of ideas. It's more of just an amalgamation of the feedback that we received. So I do have a note sheet that I sent to the Main Street Board because they were curious about the takeaways from the two meetings, and I'd be happy to send it out with my monthly report this time as well. I think there's enough points that show clear direction in some ways, but I don't think there's anything that you could truly formulate a comprehensive plan out of. But that's somewhat the point of what Carlisle Wortman, myself, and more public feedback get, is more of a clear direction on those items.
Yes, so there's things that we can incorporate from the results of those
Yes,
town
absolutely.
halls into the drafting of this, initial pass.
Absolutely.
And you'll be willing to share that with council?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Any additional comments from the dais? Councilmember Rice?
I just wanted to make a brief comment. First of all, thank you, Development Director Harrington. Sorry, I'll get this. I appreciate that the city staff wants to take this on with the help of a consultant. I think it's really important that someone with, not that consultants don't, but someone with a value-added impression of the city is working on something like this. I do have concerns as to whether or not you're giving yourself the appropriate amount of time and whether or not you have the assets to dive into something this big, or is the consulting firm doing the sort of balance of your time
I think it will be a healthy balance between our consultants. Carlisle Warman has been an amazing partner to work with so far, and the quality of the work that they've produced for us is usually that right. I just got site plan review standards, for example, back today that were, exactly what we were hoping to see from the Planning Commission standpoint, I believe. So, it's one of those things where there's not always that much extra work to do. So,
Yeah, I really appreciate your energy behind this. I think this is going to be a great asset to the city, having your experience added in there as well. So thank you very much.
Back to Councilmember
I'm
Dillon.
sorry,
No?
just one last comment. As we are beginning to work through strategic planning right now, I don't know whether, for me, I think it would be helpful if we just sort of had kind of a draft of this in just perpetuity, so that we understood, so that we're making sure that we're incorporating things as we move forward, because I know that's one of our biggest goals right now, is to not work in silos, and making sure that our master plan matches our strategic plan, which matches our capital improvement plan, which matches our budget, and sort of making sure that everything sort of flows the same. So if there's some way in which you can provide some sort of input as part of strategic planning as to some of this, so that we know what we need to be looking at.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's partly the intent of having all the department heads is to bring the plans, whether that's Director Scruggs, Parks Master Plan into fruition as well. So I think that will definitely be a portion of the strategic planning session that we have, and making sure that we're staying in alignment across our documents and upholding our values and visions as a city. So.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Any additional comments, discussion from the dais? If there's no additional comments on the motion, we do have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO, to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ben. Final new business item is item 23-11, FY23 first budget amendments. This will be a motion to receive and file the budget amendments as of December 31st, 2022.
Move to receive and file.
Moved by Councilmember Gearbaugh to receive and file. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. Who is taking the lead on this? Treasurer Cole, would you care to come forward to the podium? And again, there was a supplemental document handed out earlier this evening by City Manager O'Toole. Floor is yours.
Does everybody have a copy of the projections?
I believe that we do.
Okay.
Yep.
So as you're aware, we've changed the budget amendment process this year.
Yep, it's on. Just
Okay.
pull it forward just a little bit. Yep.
As you're aware, we changed the budget amendment process this year so that we are processing these as they are approved. So what I've done is gone back and provided you with a list of all the amendments that have been approved since the beginning of the fiscal year. In addition to that, I have provided you with a list of all the amendments that we have made as a part of our year-end closing and opening up of fund balances. And then the last part is I've included a list of the carryovers from the prior fiscal year, projects that weren't completed, that had money left over that we needed to move into this year.
Very good. Thank you. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Are there questions for the city treasurer? Easy enough.
Great.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Oh, please.
I had a great meeting with Treasurer Cole and City Manager O'Toole today, and I appreciate that we have these live snapshots of these amendments. I think this is going to be really helpful going forward for council to understand where we are and what we've approved and what we're going to approve in the future. So thank you. Thank you.
Very good. All right, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just one last comment. One document, of course, is the projection, and as you will see on it, it will indicate the reason why we will be doing our clear review and assessment of what adjustments and things need to be made going forward to bring us back to our 15% fund balance, but also address future and ongoing expenditures.
Indeed. Thank you. If there's nothing further, we do have a motion on the floor to receive and file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Let's transition out of the discussion portion of our agenda. We have commission, committee, and task force reports. I suspect this will be, I don't think there'll be a whole lot to share here. Let me start to my right and end to my left. Councilmember Kamara Sulak, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
There are no reports. The DEI meets this Wednesday and the Saline Youth Council on the 17th.
Very good. Mr. CEO, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Just to announce, the cemetery board will be meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. here in the city council chambers. Yes.
Very good. Does the cemetery board meet in council chambers or the conference room?
I'm sorry, council workroom.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Dillon, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
The zoning board of appeals met last week. We had one matter to review, and that was more of a clarification for the St. Andrew Catholic Church school that is going in. They needed a classification for a daycare center, and so that was approved.
Councilmember Gearbaugh, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
We do have a planning commission meeting this Wednesday, but I believe the one item is going to be postponed, namely for Lair Farms.
Yeah, so Lair Farms Phase 2 and Phase 3 have asked for postponement. We'll discuss that at length at the planning commission, or not at length, but
And
we'll
then the
discuss.
other one is discussing another potential marijuana facility at the abandoned car, or the former, well, it was never a car wash. The car wash that's on Sauk Trail.
And that is the last applicant that filed under the old rules. So no further applicants have submitted since then, just for clarification as well.
Thank you for that.
What was intended to be, if I recall correctly, the Clean Getaway Car Wash, which that development predates the tenure of every member of this existing board.
Except for one,
You weren't on council in 2007.
but I was back in when it was.
2004 is when it was originally constructed.
Okay. I was trying to let you off the hook because you don't really bear any responsibility for that
Well, I do,
particular
I
project.
do.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just a quick question. So what does that bring our total count to for?
We have 7 total applicants.
Mr. DeLorco, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Not until next council meeting.
Okay, and I don't mean to be presumptuous, Ms. Rice, but you were just appointed to boards and commissions this evening, so maybe you'll have something substantive to report at our next meeting. Let's transition to reports or other announcements. Mr. Kamir Sulek, do you have any?
I do not.
Mr. Seal?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Councilmember Dillon?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, excuse me. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
None.
Mr. DeLorco?
None.
Councilmember Rice?
None.
Easy enough. Passport services, who's taking the lead on this? The city manager or the city clerk?
Yeah, I can take the lead.
Or the treasurer? Is it? Okay.
Well, it's, so the issue of the passport services, we touched on during Treasurer Cole and Mai's presentation on our cost-benefit analysis. Technically, passport services falls under the clerk's department, but we're bringing it up as a financial consideration. Outlined is a memo from Clerk Royal that she worked on with former Deputy Clerk, now Purchasing Manager Ritchie, outlining what the actual cost is to the city of continuing to maintain those services. The challenge that we see internally is the amount of man-hours that it takes to perform those services and the fact that we are restricted by federal regulation as to what we can charge for the performance of services. So it is a net loss to maintain those services within our organization. We've identified several other nearby organizations, largely post offices, but some other municipal or government entities that perform the services. So we do feel that it would not be a loss to the residents of Saline to have to go to the Saline post office as opposed to City Hall, for example.
Between yourself and the city treasurer, primarily for the public's benefit, in addition to man-hours, which you just addressed, can you cite some of the figures that are outlined in the memo?
Certainly. So what we're talking about is for fiscal year 22, which is the prior fiscal year, the city lost $1,725.55 on operating its passport services program. We're expecting for the calendar year, so 6 months of FY23, we're already down $798.30. Now, not huge ticket expenses, certainly, but when you factor in the staff time, which is about 40 minutes per application to process, it does add up. We had in FY22 308 applications, so just less than one a day, 40 minutes of someone's day that's dedicated to that service.
One question, assuming that we forfeit this, I'm going to call it an amenity because it's not a core service. No one could argue it's a core service. If we were to forfeit doing passports for the ensuing years, how easy or difficult, rather, is it to bring back that service at a later date if council staff deemed it appropriate?
From my understanding, it's a matter of going through a training program to certify our organization to perform that work.
Okay, so not.
And those certification programs are held pretty frequently.
And the employees that take them.
Yes.
Well, let me kick this off. I received my passport through the City of Saline Clerk's office in 2017. I like having the amenity here at City Hall, but it is not essential. There are plenty of other agencies, as you already articulated, that offer the service in the vicinity. There's not a significant cost savings, but we're looking to generate any kind of cost savings we can. And I also think it's valuable and beneficial to the organization to free up man hours, or work hours rather, and redirect those to critical services that are absolutely essential. And quite frankly, no disrespect intended, not meaning to be pejorative, passports are not. So I would support the recommendation to eliminate the service for the time being. Again, let me start to my right and to my left. Councilmember Kamara-Sulak, any thoughts on this matter?
Yes. I also have, myself and my family, several passports through the city. So I'm a little torn with the convenience, but again, as the mayor said, it's not a core service. So, you know, in the interest of, you know, the budget and doing what we can, I can see the necessity to stop that service for now, and with a little feel good that if we had to bring it back, it wouldn't be terribly difficult.
Thank you, that was clear. Mr. Seal?
This is not something that couldn't be done by the person all by themselves, right?
For a new passport or for a youth, you do have to come to a passport agent.
Oh, you do? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I support the staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
So, thank you. So just for clarification, we're saying that it takes about 40 minutes, and we do collect a fee of $35 per application. So how are we so far in the negative?
If you'll let me, a lot of the times the people do not have all the documentation that they need, so it takes them longer, or they have to run home to get a checkbook because we can't take credit cards. So there's a lot of things that are included, and we can't keep them overnight. So if you have a 4 o'clock appointment and you have to go back to Ann Arbor to get your wallet or your checkbook and then come back, it takes an additional time. Plus, we have to hold on to those documents. So there's other things, and we also do the end of the night. We have to compile all the information, make copies, and at the end, we do a spreadsheet of all the documents that we've received during the day too. And then we have 3 different ways. You can do regular, you can do expedite, and you can do overnight. So according to which of those envelopes you need to do, or if you might need to do all 3 of them, it takes a different amount of time for everything.
And also of note, if there is an error with processing the application and we have to resend it, the city incurs the cost for that postage. We can't charge another fee to the individual. So if the passport agency determines additional documentation or clarification is necessary, that's on us. There's also the cost of the recertifications that we discussed. It's not really built into that $35 fee. Those are costs that are incurred solely by the city. And then last, not necessarily a dollar figure associated with it, but there is the retention of vital records, which is a risk mitigation issue for us to have to store that information on site.
I too have gotten passports. I have utilized every possible service that is offered through the passport office for children, adults, expedited renewals. I think we have done them all together. And I sort of have a different view, and I apologize because I think this is a vital service that the city offers. I think that there could be ways to streamline it, that maybe there are just certain hours or a certain amount of applications that we are allowed to do per month, that you just allocate that and say we will only process 100 per month. And then once you hit that, then you have to tell people, I'm sorry, you have to roll into the next month or a weekly or whatever the case may be. I don't think that it's convenient, and no disrespect to the Saline Post Office, but their process is not user-friendly whatsoever. When you have an appointment, you still wait in line, and you wait for the person to be available who may be doing something else. And it's not necessarily, the best interface of doing something. And going to Chelsea or Ipsy is not necessarily convenient for people. I think in the whole scheme of things, this is a very small dollar amount for the city, and it provides a service that obviously 308 people deemed important last year. So, I mean, when you start to break that out over the cost of it, I just think it's something that the city should continue to offer, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Mayor Pro Tem Gearba.
Do you have any feeling or stats as to how many of those 308 are actually city residents?
Very few. We have people who come from Dearborn, Detroit, Chelsea, everywhere. Because once they hear about us, they would prefer to come to us. And we don't mind doing it, don't get me wrong, but it is a lot of time. And with Katrina now going to the treasurer's department, I am the only person in the clerk's department. So if I have a passport and somebody at the cemetery, I have to decide on which is more important at that point. And I understand that you can put your passport as a calendar item, but when somebody calls and they need an immediate need at the cemetery, I can't just ignore that because I have a passport appointment. So this is where I'm concerned. I had thought about maybe doing like one Saturday a month, but that is something council would have to approve. But I mean, it would be able to at least give the residents continued services. But day to day, there's just not enough of me to do everything that needs to be done.
No, and I agree, you have to have the opportunity cost of what you're going to do, what other things we need to do. My concern is just what you mentioned. If we were providing this service for the taxpayers and subsidizing it, that's one thing. But we're kind of subsidizing non-residents, and I think we do enough of that with the rec center. I think there's some other things that this support can be done. There's other things like Rush My Passport and some other agency, AAA. I just got something yesterday that I saw that had for AAA members that you can use it, but I suspect you can use it because there's an actual, got it pulled up right now. So there are other opportunities, and I agree though with Councilmember Dillon, our post office isn't really the place to go because I've experienced so many problems with the post office in the last month, I can't tell you. But for me, I think I'd have to go back to the original reason. I thought we were making money off of this at one time, and so, or it was helping subsidize. But at this point, if we are actually showing that it can't make money and we're really basically providing a service for non-residents, it's time to do something different.
That was clear. Fair enough. Mr. Delorco?
Yeah, I appreciate both sides of the issue. I'm in favor of looking for a compromise to enable us to continue to provide this service to the citizens, albeit maybe not at the same frequency or convenience that it has been. The suggestion of doing it maybe one Saturday a month might be something we can look into. Because the impact to the citizens is more than one might imagine. I agree the post office is a holy nightmare to deal with. And this is a nice convenience that's offered to our citizens, and I hate to see that it's losing money. So I'd like to reevaluate this and find a way to make it profitable again.
Fair enough. Councilmember Rice?
Is the fee structure something that is implemented, like you can't raise the fee structure?
Correct. The Passport Services Office sets that fee.
I can see both sides of this story. I think what I would like to see if we rid of this service is communication with residents as to how, where, when, or if we are going to just minimize the service, explain, to the community, my question was how many were actually citizens of the city of Saline. So I think if we, to our Saline residents, say, this service is going to be no longer, but here are your options, we probably won't, hear too terribly many grumbles. And not that I'm not concerned with the outer community, but I think we have to focus on our Saline community first.
So it's a little bit of a mixed bag up here.
Yep.
I think there's a broad consensus to make a change, and to free up some additional hours in the clerk's office and to reduce our liability. Is there the opportunity before we make a final decision to maybe evaluate or investigate the feasibility of what Clerk Royal just addressed, which is transitioning to maybe one Saturday a month?
Yeah, as a staff, I think we can circle up and discuss what we can do to maybe narrow the scope of when services are offered, maybe determine whether we have to continue to certify as many individuals as we do, because I think right now we have 4 individuals certified to help with services as kind of a redundancy. That may be a cost-saving measure.
Can we also evaluate, Councilmember Gearbaugh just whispered an interesting point. I don't know if this is even feasible. Can you limit the service to just city residents or people within the broader Saline community?
No, that's a very fair question, but again, through the federal standards of being a passport, you have to, yeah.
Fair enough. So maybe we can revisit this in a 2-week time frame, or maybe early February at the very latest?
Certainly, one thing I would add is, technically, because it doesn't require us to expend funds or contract out for the services, I don't believe we need a formal action of council. So if you're amenable, I think I can just get with staff and maybe make a recommendation on how we could streamline services and communicate to you all. And as long as I have consensus to make that decision, it would be an administrative one.
I have no objection. Does anyone from the dais object to that? No? Okay, easy enough. Very good. Unless there's anything further on passport services, let's transition to chickens in Saline.
So this is an item that was brought to code review. Our ordinance.
Make sure you're speaking to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Especially with your mask on.
Sorry. Our ordinance is very vague on whether chickens are permissible or not. Councilmember Rice was actually at this meeting. I think Mr. Delorco had to unfortunately be absent. So essentially the ordinance is vague. It sounds like hearing from former city superintendent Rubel and potentially some of you that chickens were at one point expressly allowed. I don't know when that ordinance was repealed, if it was repealed by accident or what happened exactly with that. But essentially, as it states now, I would say since it's not specifically enumerated in our code, I would lean towards no, chickens are not allowed unless they're within somebody's home proper. Per our code, small animals confined solely within the dwelling proper would be allowed in the residential district, and it specifically calls birds. So a chicken in somebody's garage is permissible, but not a coop in somebody's yard. Talking to the code review committee, definitely ambivalent about chickens, generally leaning in the pro direction. I have no personal interest or passion towards chickens. I would not keep them myself, but that's not relevant. So I'm just looking for general direction. Do we want to make the code expressly allow chickens, allow them with restrictions, or prohibit them? Just needing to know your thoughts so I can draft an ordinance and bring it back to you.
It's interesting because there have been residents of my street or my vicinity, which is historically referred to as Saline Heights, who have had small coops and chickens during during the tenure in which I've lived in that vicinity. So since July of 2005.
And it was the previous staff members, there were some previous staff members who had the opinion that they were allowed per our ordinance. But as I said, looking at it in the most legal framework that we possibly can, it would not appear that they're allowed. And at the very least, we owe the public clarity, both in the code and in messaging.
Sure.
And since my view is they're not allowed right now, it would be helpful to know what the intent was.
Definitely. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was on when we did that, there was an issue with, and I think Jack may remember, and Ms. Dillon too, there was an issue with people feeding animals and causing a nuisance. So then we changed the ordinance to basically make it that you can have pretty much any animal except exotic animals or certain numbers, but that if it was a nuisance or caused noise or something like that, it wouldn't be allowed. So that's what, we had this whole discussion on the fowl, because it used to be a specific ordinance regarding fowl in the city, which meant chicken, ducks, turkeys, all that. So they were under the impression, and that's what our attorneys told us, was that, yeah, those would be allowable. But now with your observation, and this question has come up every single year since we passed that, we need to clarify that chickens are allowable, just not roosters. I would go back to the original ordinance from probably 7 or 8 years ago and look at what our it's in there. I know it's out there in some old.
So you would permit chickens?
Definitely, because people want to do that, but you need to limit the number. But there also has to be requirements about containment, keeping them clean, noise, all of that.
Fair enough. Mr. Delorco, what are your thoughts on this matter?
If there's already existing framework that permitted our residents to have them, it'd be hard pressed to take that away from them now. So clarification, clean up the ordinance, let's get something either to council or code review that we can work through and provide clarity.
Yeah, I think Mr. Harrington's goal would be first to take something to code review to draft if there's consensus from council, and then bring it back to this body.
So it might be technically a zoning ordinance, so it would have to potentially go to planning
Yep.
first.
Okay.
So it'd have multiple parties would be able to chime in.
Right.
Councilmember Rice?
I'll reiterate, as a citizen, when I was on the code review committee, my standpoint was indifference as to whether or not we allow chickens in the city, but my only concern was we not force the removal of current chickens in the city. Chickens are pets to a lot of folks. So I'm on team, just clarify, make sure that the ordinance is very clear, and then communicate with the residents.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Kamir Sulak?
I was going to emphasize the number of chickens, and I guess a lot will be figured out in the code review as we go through that, or the zoning, but eggs are $5, a dozen or more, so it could be really, it could be profitable, but that's my 2 cents.
Fair enough. Mr. Seal?
I'm dismayed sometimes by the way people keep supposed pets or animals, and sometimes their callous attitude towards their neighbors in that regard. I guess my personal feeling would be to say, no, unless you already have them, and then you're grandfathered until they're gone. Or eaten.
Be gone.
Well, it's hard to follow that. I actually agree with Mr. CO. I have seen areas in which, when we talk about noise, that's a very subjective thing, and the timing of noise and such, that I'm not 100% sure that having chickens within the city, especially maybe if we look at where they're zoned, in neighborhoods where you've got close quarters. I do agree that, there are loose chickens that I've seen wandering in a few neighborhoods. The noise is an issue, but also the safety of people is a concern, because with like the bird flu and such, and I just want to make sure that we're not perpetuating disease in animals because they're not kept to a certain standard and such. Like, I know that the farm at Rentschler Farm, when there was issues with bird flu, they had a certain protocol with their birds. And we don't have a way to ensure that other people are doing that. And so that makes me a bit concerned.
For sure. And I will add that, enforcing anything is additional code enforcement time. So it always bears consideration when adding, regulations and restrictions. Well, how practically is this going to be enforced by our staff? Right. What is the feasibility? We could have, 60 regulations surrounding what to do when your bird is sick, and we have special test kits, but all that takes time. It takes acquisition. So things to think about. But I'd be happy to draft an ordinance, get some feedback on it, and maybe in light of the split council, make it more restrictive at first, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. My personal preference is sort of in alignment with Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and Councilmember CO, but I could be persuaded to permit individuals, what's the terminology? They own chickens, I guess? They keep chicken, raise, okay. I could be amenable to allowing residents to raise chickens, but I think the regulatory framework would need to be significant and appropriate to prevent any type of nuisance. Mr. Kamir Sulak?
Yes, would we require people to register their chickens?
It is definitely a possibility. So there are a number of provisions in our code that require some sort of registration with the city or some sort of acknowledgement from the city that haven't historically been lived up to, I would say. So there are ways to add it into our permitting software that they are indeed permitted to have a chicken. And we could do an administrative review of those things. It's definitely a possibility, and not something I'm opposed to. I know other cities that have pursued that route specifically for chickens. Now, is that the best use of staff time is a whole other question, but that's one for you all to weigh.
Do you know if other cities have a site size or width?
Yeah, so
lot width requirements, so that maybe that.
Ann Arbor has a whole ordinance.
Yeah, so most cities have to develop an entire ordinance surrounding this specifically. The previous community I worked for had a pretty elaborate chicken ordinance, and it was a community similar position. They, not huge fans of having chickens, did not want the proliferation, limited the numbers. So I can do some investigating and maybe bring aspects of that ordinance here if it makes sense for what I've heard tonight. So.
Mr. Gearba, did you want to end this conversation?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, one of the things is like we're allowing fowl or whatever, but people are now starting to get the idea of little baby goats and that kind of thing. That was really the premise, was not to be able to have exotic animals or small farm animals like that. I mean, even the Rentschler Farm has an exception because we had to grant it in order to have the sheep, because we don't allow any kind of that type of animal. So I don't want to open up another box with this, a Pandora box in terms, but the chicken thing has always been an issue with individuals. I mean, as far as I'd rather maybe have some chickens than I would have people. This goes right back to like auxiliary unit dwellings. So some of these little things are what people have asked for because of this concern about farm to table, about protection of their food, about knowing where it's grown, how they do it. So I want to accommodate that idea, but I don't want to make it where we have little radio bands on every chicken. So for me, I think we need to find a very balanced approach to this. And in the past, we've done it. We've had chickens for people. The roosters have always been an issue, but everybody realized it. I mean, out to the farm, we had a dozen roosters, but a mink took care of that a couple months ago. So,
For sure, and I would add that the ordinance would be specifically catered to chickens. Subsection 2 of this ordinance was keeping possession or harboring of live hogs, cows, sheep, goats, or any species of equines is strictly prohibited.
and the Michigan Department of Agriculture oversees what you can do with chickens and whatever else. So
Okay, so we could.
fell underneath museum rules. There's other things in terms of what you would do in terms of farms and so forth. So there's things to put in place, and it'll be like mostly everything else we do. It's based on complaint enforcement, not proactive enforcement. So.
Very good. Okay, then we're going to transition to our final item of the evening, which is the discharge of unpolluted water. We had quite the eclectic list on the discussion portion of tonight's agenda. Please.
So this is also an item from code review that's come here, and we're just looking for some general yes/no guidance on it. So currently, it is illegal to have your sump pump hooked up to the sanitary sewer unless your home was built before or your home was established before the ordinance was created in the 70s. So we have a number of properties that still have their sump pump connected to our sanitary sewer. This is really going off of Engineer Humphreys's recommendations, but she believes that this is a known inflow and infiltration or I&I issue, and one that does take some capacity of our system, and that we'd like to clean up going forward. So essentially, we're looking for, should this be something that we cease across the board to end the grandfather clause? Is this something that we require replacement for as these homes replace their sump pumps to make sure that it's no longer hooked to our sanitary sewer? Or is this an ordinance that we sit on and are okay with? So it was Engineer Humphreys's opinion that we take action on it, but she was looking for deference on the degree to how quickly we take action on it. Is it something we slowly phase out, or that we end swiftly?
Yeah, I can kick this one off because I probably have more perspective on this matter than anyone on the dais. Maybe that's a bold perspective or bold assertion, but I have a sump pump that runs frequently. I'm in a house that was constructed in 1951. It is connected to the sanitary sewer. During torrential rains, if that sump pump fails, it has proved nearly catastrophic. And there are times with torrential rains that my sump pump hasn't even been able to keep up, so I'm actually in the process of installing a backup. So I would be amenable to moving forward with a change, albeit slowly. I think the recommendation you made that maybe require requiring a change at such time as the grandfathered sump pumps are replaced or removed makes sense to me. But I can tell you, just speaking as a private homeowner, not as a mayor or as a member of council, I mean, I benefit greatly from the fact that that sump pump is connected to the sanitary sewer, and I'm not precisely sure where I would discharge that water in the event that I was prohibited from doing what I'm currently able to do.
Right, so we go to the storm sewer in that instance.
As long as the storm sewer.
Right, so it
Available.
could be a costly repair to make because it requires some sort of connection to a storm sewer.
Right, okay. Mr. Gearba?
The only thing, there's a lot of precedence of this with Ann Arbor and a lot of lawsuits. So I would want to have a legal opinion on what we're actually capable of doing because they're facing it. I mean, the whole plan in Ann Arbor was to force everyone to remove their footing drains and their sump pumps like that. And it got expensive and in a lot of cases never did happen. And so I don't know how they're implementing it now, but that would be my bigger concern. And I mean, the other issue is that issue of if we have storm sewers available, that would be a benefit, but if their storm sewers aren't available, then yeah, you're gonna have, I don't wanna force someone that they have to manage their water on their property when it's been that way for eons, for decades.
I think getting a legal perspective is probably the appropriate.
That was definitely the next step too, I just needed some.
Yeah. Let's go real quick, because I think getting legal perspective is
That's definitely the
invaluable.
next step.
Mr. Delorco, any additional comments?
I wanted to make a distinction. You're not talking about drain footage tiles, you're just talking about sub pumps.
Correct, it's the sump pump hooked to our sanitary sewer.
Okay. So does a homeowner typically pull a permit when they replace their sub pump?
They are supposed to, yes, that would be a very common plumbing permit.
It'd be very common for them not to pull a permit, though, because no one's going to know. How are we going to know?
Right, unless we find out at a later inspection, or if for whatever reason there was a violation notice or a neighbor called to say, hey, they were doing
I just
extensive
think
work.
that's going to be very difficult to keep our finger on the pulse of who's replaced one, when, and how, and whether they pull a permit or not is dubious. And to phase them out as they replace them is going to be difficult.
For sure. So I don't think the solution's meant to be 100% across the board. I think it's just meant to reduce the I&I in our sewer system. But this is one way to accomplish it. It's by no means, and once again, why we brought it to a discussion item here tonight. So.
Okay. All right.
Councilmember Rice?
Yeah, one of the things that full disclosure, I was part of this conversation as a citizen on the code review committee. One of the things that I asked for was some numbers from the city engineer as to how many people this impacts, what is that actual infiltration, like percentage-wise, like what are we really looking at here before we start impacting the citizens?
Fair enough. It's information, assuming we can gather. Mr. Kamir Sulak, any thoughts on this?
My thoughts have already been thrown out there, and I think especially Ms. Rice's, Councilperson Rice's comments on how much effect this makes, how much I&I are we getting from residential properties? Because, yeah, this might be more than, not worth all the energy and effort, and we don't want to do what Ann Arbor did, and we wouldn't. Thank you.
Mr. Seal?
I don't know, I'm ambivalent about it. My sump drains out into my yard, and I've thought about even putting a dry well in to drain it into the dry well to keep the water out of the yard, but I haven't done that yet. It still drains into my yard, which then goes into a swale, which goes down to a detention, which I think ends up in the storm sewer. I don't know.
Not knowing is fair. Councilmember Dillon?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add beyond what's been said to the conversation. I do agree with Mr. Delorco that it would be nearly impossible to be checking on this. The only stopgap I could see is at a transfer of property, that there would have to be an inspection, should that house have been flagged. At that point, it would have to be done to not keep it going in perpetuity. But I do think that there's, based on what the issues were with Ann Arbor, because we did look at this at one point, is sort of understanding, you know, what is the impact long-term on us for I&I? Because I do want to ask, I mean, and this is probably well out of your realm, it's probably for Engineer Humphreys, which is, we've identified some businesses that had issues. I mean, have those been addressed yet at this point? Because those had some significant I&I issues.
Because we did that smoke study, shouldn't that have identified most of those situations?
Right, and so just sort of understanding like what we're talking about, is this everybody, is this, you know? Because you will have people like the mayor who, his sub runs all the time, just based on, the area in which he lives, and then you'll have other areas which it runs, you know, during only a massive significant water event. So, I mean, kind of understanding that, I think if we could get a little bit more detail.
Absolutely. Very good.
From my recollection, Councilmember Dillon, just FYI, we were just talking residential, because I did bring up that question. I said, are there commercial properties that also fall into this scope? And City Engineer Humphreys was going to take a look, so she was going to provide that additional information.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we will look forward to hearing more on this matter in the coming months. That exhausts the discussion portion of tonight's agenda. We come now to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
I started early, so I get her early. As far as, I think years ago, the sanitary and the other one were connected to homes that were built like on Canterbury and Rosemont. I think the storm and sanitary was one line, and that could be yours, Mayor, because, and then the law came that they would be separated. And I'm not sure what year that was. But I think that's another thing, because on Canterbury, I know there are sub pumps, but they have they only have the one line too. Now, the other thing was as far as chickens. Well, I know eggs are expensive, but the rooster, I think, is going to be very important for laying eggs. And a rooster in the morning can drive you nuts. And as far as noise. So I think that's important too. And as far as the passport thing, I think one day would be nice to be able to set it aside, but acknowledgement to the public, if you can't make it for that day, other areas which do provide this service. I think it's very important in whatever you do that you give us other areas. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for your comments. Any additional citizen comments? The record will reflect there are none. Please note our upcoming meetings, including a work meeting at 6 p.m. on the 23rd to talk about wastewater treatment rehabilitation, and then a regular meeting at 7. Also, please note, as was mentioned earlier this evening at our council retreat, that our goal and strategic planning session is scheduled for next Thursday, the 19th. If I'm not mistaken, is that 3 p.m.?
Correct.
And that will begin in Ypsilanti at the location referenced by our facilitator earlier this evening. It's right off of East Michigan Avenue. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:33 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, seconded by Councilmember Kamara Sulak. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.